In the name of Allah Almighty, the most beneficent and the most merciful, it is lecture number 8, and today our topic of discussion is Rejection and Ode and Kubla Khan. These two poems are by S.T. Coleridge, and one by one we will discuss their summaries, their text, and then themes. Okay, starting with the lecture outline, here we have the introduction of S.T. Coleridge. Then I'll explain the dejection and ode word line by line. There's a text of this poem, and then I'll explain the summary. There are themes. After this poem, there will be a poem of Kubla Khan, and again its text, its summary, themes, and then there is conclusion. Okay, starting with the introduction of S.T. Coleridge. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the 10th and last child of the Vicar of Ottery, St. Mary near Devonshire, England, was born on October 21, 1772. After his father's death in 1782, he was sent to Christ Hospital for schooling. So he was sent to this it was the name of the school where he was sent. So he was the 10th and the last child of, it is the name of their family, and he was born. The years from 1795 to 1802 were for Coleridge a period of fast poetic and intellectual growth. So at this time, he wrote such kind of poems which became masterpieces, and we all know that he, along with Wordsworth, published lyrical ballads in 1798. The most influential event in Coleridge's career was his friendship with William Wordsworth and his wife Dorothy from 1796 to 1810. So he also he was a friend of William Wordsworth, and the Dorothy was the wife of S.T. Coleridge, and she was sister of William Wordsworth. So that is why they were related to one another. This friendship brought a joint publication with the Wordsworth of the Lyrical Ballads, a collection of 23 poems, in September 1798. Okay, starting with the first poem, that is Dejection and Ode. So before going into a detail, I would like to explain the topic, that is dejection. Dejection means extreme sadness. Sadness accompanied by, associated with disappointment. When you are not only sad but also disappointed, when you cannot see hope in anything, you feel dejected. So it is an ode, a poem written on the theme of dejection, on the theme of disappointment. So it is a poem written by Samuel Taylor Coleridge in 1802. The poem in its original form was written to Sarah Hutchinson, a woman who was not his wife, and discusses his feeling of love for her. So she was not the wife of S.T. Coleridge, but she was the woman he loved, and this poem discusses his feelings of love for her. The various versions of the poem describe Coleridge's inability to write poetry and living in a state of paralysis. So his inability to write poetry because of the depression, because of the tension, he could not write poetry. So this shows his intellectual paralysis, his intellectual inability to write. But published editions remove his personal feelings and mention of Hutchinson. So in the published edition, there is no such reference to that he had written this poem for Sarah Hutchinson. Okay, text. Before reading the text, I would like to tell you people that this is Ballad of Sir Patrick Pence, written by some poet, and this is a phrase taken from stanza taken from that poem of Sir Patrick Pence, and the whole poem, the Dejection and Ode, is based on the theme of this stanza. Late yesterday, and I saw the new moon with the old moon in her arms, and I fear, my master dear, we shall have a deadly storm. So this is a kind of, moon in front of another moon. It means that there is something in front of the new moon which forecasts that the storm is coming, and storm is also deadly. According to the poet, when there's a moon in front of another moon, it means that there is something which is it has shown its reflection in the moon. It means that something is coming in front of the moon. Suppose there's a moon, all right? So in front of it, whenever there occurs some kind of cloud, whenever there are some atmospheric elements are there, so what we see its reflection in the moon. So it means that moon is showing that, as a result, you see reflection of that storm in the moon. So according to the poet, there is a reflection of the storm in the in the moon, and this storm and there is and we get to know that the storm is coming, but poet is so sad inside, he's so depressed, he's so tense that he cannot feel the arrival of the storm. Even if the storm had arrived, he would not feel any difference, because he's so numb in his pain, he's so much, so dissolved in his pain that he cannot feel that there is something going outside. Okay, this poem has 6 parts, and I'll explain only the one part of it, because we do not have enough time to cover the whole poem. You can read the rest of the poem yourself, it is easily available. So I'll explain only the first part, line by line. Well, if the bard was weather-wise, who made the grand old ballad of Sir Patrick Pence. Bard is a poet. Alright, so he was a wise who wrote the grand old ballad. Ballad is a kind of poem which is written in the form of song. If he was that grand, this night so tranquil now. This night means so tranquil, means so calm. Will not go hence, will not go anywhere. Unroused by winds that ply a busier trade. It means that the winds are involved in some kind of trade. String mean moving in a straight line. So they are moving in the form of they are moving a trade, unroused. So this night is unroused. This night is not affected by any kind of wind. Then those which mold yon cloud in lazy flakes. So it is also not affected by those winds which mold the cloud. Yon means distant, away. The clouds which are away in lazy flakes. Lazy flakes means moving slowly. Flakes means sheets. So sheets of ice which are moving above us, they are moving in a very slow pace, and this wind will also not change their direction. Or the dull sobbing draft that moans and rakes. Dull sobbing draft. And also the dull clouds which seems like they are shedding the drops in the form of rain. They sometimes moan, they sometimes happy, they are sometimes happy, so it will not also affect them. Upon the strings of this alien lute means it is a kind of instrument from which air passes and the music is produced, which better far were mute. So the instruments, they were also not playing the music. For lo, the new moon winter bright and overspread with phantom light. Phantom means kind of ghost. It means that there is some strange kind of light in front of the moon, which tells that the storm is coming. With swimming phantom light overspread, but rimmed and circled by a silver thread. I see the old moon in her lap foretelling the coming on of rain and squally blast. Squally means in the form of squalls, in the form of spells. There's one spell, another spell, alright, one by one there's a rain. And oh, that even now the gust were swelling. Gust means rush of wind were swelling, and the wind speed was swelling. Okay, its summary tells, the speaker recalls a poem that tells the tale of Sir Patrick Pence. In this poem, the moon takes on a certain strange appearance that presages the coming of a storm. So there is a strange appearance of the moon which tells that the storm is coming. The speaker declares that if the author of the poem possessed a sound understanding of weather, then a storm will break on this night as well, for the moon looks new now as it did in the poem. So if the poet was here with me, so he would have said that the moon which I am seeing right now is the same kind of moon which was described in the poem. So it means that there was this moon outside the means in front of the poet Coleridge, and also the poem written for Sir Patrick Pence. So the moon in both the poems is the same. The speaker wishes ardently for a storm to erupt, for the violence of the squall might curb his numb feeling. He says that he feels only a dull pain, a grief without a pang, a constant deadening of all his feelings, speaking to a woman whom he addresses, "Oh lady." So he actually wants that storm to erupt. He wants that storm to bring changes in his life, to change his, dull pain. So he says, oh lady. He has been gazing at the western sky all evening, able to see its beauty, but unable fully to feel it. He says that staring at the green sky will never raise his spirits, for no outward forms can generate feelings. Emotions can only emerge from within. So he says that there's nothing going to happen because of the storm. The storm is not going to change your internal feelings. These are the feelings which are inside you, who will change your mind. Even if you are happy inside, so you will feel happiness around you. If you are sad inside, so you will feel sadness around you. According to the speaker, we receive but what we give. This is what I have just said, that when you give happiness, you feel when you feel happy, you give happy, so you receive happiness. The soul itself must provide the light by which we may hope to see nature's true beauty. This the Okay, I'll tell you the summary of this whole passage, so I'm not going to read it. You can read it yourself by pausing the video. And he says that our soul, it has a music of joy. So if we play this music of joy, so we will feel happy, and if we play the music of sadness, so we will feel sad. Okay, and he says that there are a lot of tribulations. I'm again going to just summarize this, what is written here. That he says that when every tribulation was simply the material, okay, but now there was a time when poet had different kinds of difficulties, and he says that he had suffered, he had bore the burden of such difficulties, and he had went through it. But now, because he is sad inside, so even the petty troubles, even the petty difficulties become very worse, so he cannot get rid of them. So these are the viper thoughts which, you know, they keep on pressing the poet. So he thinks that the world is an instrument which is played, and its melody is placed, this is an instrument and its melody is such that which is used to play to find some lost girl. And he says that it is the midnight, I cannot sleep because my mind is so wandering within the thoughts, I am sleepless, but I just hope that my lady, his lover, that was Sarah Hutchinson, he was thinking that may she had a good sleep, may she enjoy the joy in her life which I cannot enjoy because I am so, you know, in pain because of the love I have for her in my heart. All right, another poem. Okay, first let's discuss the themes of dejection. There's a theme of dissatisfaction, theme of man and the natural world. There's theme of love in it, because he had written this poem for Sarah Hutchinson, whom he was in love. So there's a theme of love in this poem as well, so you can read the slides yourself. Okay, next we have the Kubla Khan. Kubla Khan is also a poem by S.T. Coleridge, and Kubla Khan is considered to be one of the greatest poems by the English romantic poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who said he wrote the strange and hallucinatory poem shortly after waking up from an opium-influenced dream in 1797. In the first part of the poem, the speaker envisions of the landscape surrounding the Mongol ruler and Chinese Emperor Kubla Khan's summer palace called Zendu. Before narrating the further lines, reading the further lines, I would like to tell you people the summary of this poem, that Kubla Khan, this is what he talks about, something of his imagination. Poet says that there was a Mongol emperor named Kubla Khan, and he had a palace. He had ordered to build a palace, and this is what all is the imagination of the poet. And he says that there was a Mongol emperor who ordered his servants to build a palace named Zendu, and in front of that palace there should be a river, there should be some caves, there should be gardens, it should have a magnificent beauty. So this magnificent beauty is explained in this, is presented in this poem. All right, so he wanted his palace to be as a place of beauty, pleasure and violence. The speaker suggests that these qualities are all deeply intertwined, and in the final stanza announces a desire to build a pleasure palace. So he also desired to build a palace of his pleasure, of the speaker's own thought song. So what happened, although it was the imagination of the S.T. Coleridge that he talked about this palace and all the caves and all the ways, rivers, etc., but at the same time, at the end, when there is a end of the poem, S.T. Coleridge says that in his imagination he built that kind of palace, but he feels that as if above him, where he was standing above him under the sky, he feels that that palace is built in the air, and people can also look at that palace, and whatever I have imagined, it has become a reality. Okay, text. In Zendu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. Decree means to order. Kubla Khan ordered to build a pleasure dome. Dome is a kind of shape, you know, of rounded shape. So he wanted to have that kind of structure of his palace, where Alf, the sacred river, ran. Alf is the name of the river. This river ran through caverns measureless to man, through different caves which are measureless. People cannot measure these caves, down to a sunless sea. So it enters the sea which is sunless, means wherever you see there is no sun. All right, so it is, covered sea, you can say. So twice 5 miles of fertile land. So it means this river runs into 10 miles of the fertile land, with walls and towers were girdled round. So the this ground had walls and towers, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rails. Sinuous rails means sinus, basically related to your senses, related to your sense of seeing. You, whenever you see the rails and the the boundaries, you feel, you see them, you touch them, you smell them. All right, where blossomed many an incense bearing tree. There are a lot of trees there, and here were forests ancient as the hills. So forests are as ancient, as old as the hills, and folding sunny spots of greenery. So that deep romantic chasm which slanted, chasm means valley. So there's a valley there. Down the green hill athwart a cedron cover. A savage cedron is a kind of tree. So there's a tree, a cover of such kind of trees down the green hill. A savage place. A savage means strange, wild. It's a different place, as holy and enchanted as ever beneath a waning moon was haunted by woman wailing for her demon lover, and from this chasm with careless turmoil seething. And if this earth is fast, thick, panting, were breathing. So it is kind of, he had created an imagery. He says, under the valley, there is a woman who is sitting there. She is mourning for her lover, her demon lover who has left her. So she is very much stressed. And from this chasm, from this valley, with ceaseless turmoil seething. Ceaseless means unending. Turmoil means, tension and uneasiness, turbulence. So there is some kind of turbulence is coming out. So it is as if the earth was panting, earth was taking long breath, because it is like the earth has tired. All right, so summary I have already narrated the summary, so I will read the first its slide. In a place called Zandu, the Mongolian leader Kublai Khan ordered his servants to construct an impressive domed building for pleasure and recreation on the banks of holy river Alp, which ran through a series of caves so far west that no one could measure them, and then down into an underground ocean. So they created a space with 10 miles of fertile earth, surrounded by walls and towers, and in it there were gardens with sunny little streams and fragrant trees, as well as very old forests with sunny clearings in the middle. But oh, how beautiful was that deep, impressive gorge that cut through the green hill. Between the cedar trees, it was such a wild place, a place so sacred and bewitching that you might expect it to be haunted by a woman crying out for her satanic lover beneath the crescent moon. Okay, so you can read this slide by yourself. It is all the summary that I have already narrated. Although I haven't read the text, the whole text of the poem, I have read only the first 2 or 3 stanzas. So you can read the rest of the poem yourself. Okay, let's read it out. And out of the gorge with its endlessly churning river, a geyser would sometimes erupt as though the ground itself were breathing hard. So out of the gorge, out of that valley, so this geyser means there's a place where the water accumulates. So this water of the river erupts from there. It is as if it was breathing hard. This geyser would send shards of rock flying into the air like hail, or like grain scattered as if being harvested. So there was a fountain from which that kind of, the fragments of the rocks were coming out. And as he flung up these rocks, the geyser would also briefly send the water of the holy river bursting up into the air. The holy river ran for 5 miles in a lazy winding course through woods and fields before it reached the incredibly deep caves and sank in a flurry into the much stiller ocean. So what happened? This holy river, it ran into the 5 miles. It reached the incredibly deep caves and sank in a ocean. And in the rushing waters of the caves, Kubla heard the voices of his ancestors. And in that water, the Kubla had heard that voices of his ancestor. They said that the war would come. The shadow of Kubla Khan's player palace was reflected by the waves, and you could hear the sound of the geyser mingling with that of the water rushing through the caves. So the shadow of Kubla Khan's player water palace was reflected by the waves. So what happens at the shadow of the Kubla Khan, that player palace, it is shown, the waves show the shadow of the palace. And this was truly a miraculous place. Kubla Khan's player palace was both sunny and had icy caves. The caves were full of ice. In a vision, I once saw an Ethiopian woman play a stringent instrument and sing about a mountain. So in this slide it is written that there was a woman, she was an Ethiopian woman, she was playing music on some instrument, and she was also singing. So what song she had sung was the same as poet has written, the Kubla Khan. Okay, so on the basis of the song, that poem that women have sung, he can build a castle in the air. Who? The poets can build a castle in the air, make a circle around him 3 times, and refuse to look at him. He has eaten the food of the gods and drunk the milk of heaven. So it is like that the people around him would say that, because St. Coleridge was singing that song of that woman, so people would say that it is so, soothing. It is like he had eaten the food of gods. So it means he had taken inspiration from the god, and it is so unique, and it is so overwhelming, it is so soothing. So there are different themes. There's a theme of player, and there's a theme of violence. Player in a sense because he had ordered his servants to build this palace because of his player. And there's a you feel pleased to watch the beauty of the caves and the rivers. And there's a theme of violence as well. Violence in the sense that when the ancestors of the Kubla Khan said to him that, okay, just be prepared for the war. So that is how there's a theme of violence. You can read the slide yourself. Then there's a theme of creativity and reason. Creativity in a sense, he talked about 2 aspects of creativity. One, when woman was talking about, when he gave the reference of the women, the Ethiopian woman who had composed a song, and she also sang the song. On the other hand, it is the product of the imagination of Kubla Khan. Why? Because he had written something creative. And there's a theme of, or you can say this reason as well. Reason in a sense, he talked about this river Alpha, which is named after the name of God. Alright, God in a sense, that Alpha is the name of God in Greek. So it represents the God. The power of the God is also reflected in the river. There's a limits of creativity. Kubla Khan celebrates the power of human creativity. It also recognizes that such creativity is limited, fragile, and quickly lost. So this, although humans have the power of creativity, but this creativity is limited. Alright. Although it is now midnight, Coleridge has no intention of going to sleep. However, he wishes for sleep to visit his lady and to use its healing powers to lift the lady's spirit and bring her joy. Coleridge concludes the poem by wishing the lady eternal joy. That is the conclusion of the poem Dejection and Ode. Here we have the conclusion of the poem Kubla Khan. Kubla Khan's summary takes us through the beautiful land of Zendu through its vivid description. It explores the theme of man along with nature. It's a highly romantic poem focusing on humans and natural forces beautifully. So there's an interaction of the humans and the natural forces as shown in the poem of Kubla Khan. Alright, that's all for today.